Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, thank you. We are about to start. Before we do get started, I want to do a little housekeeping. First off, I want you to cast your eyes in that direction. You'll notice that there's a screen displaying. If you're to the left or to the rear and you have trouble seeing that screen, this is a good time to make your move so that you can see it a little better. Also, if you have a mobile phone or other electronic device, please put it on vibrate or turn it off so that we're not interrupted. And I will again say good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. We'd like to acknowledge the GERS CEO, Nibs, our panelists and members of the broadcast family who are bringing this to you live, and also GERS staff members and you, our honored guests. My name is Anita Davis. I'll be your host and moderator, and I'd like to welcome you to this town hall meeting hosted by your government employees retirement system entitled Insolvency is Not an Option. Today you're going to hear from Austin L. Nibs, CPA and administrator, as well as CEO of the Government Employees Retirement System. I'd like to acknowledge him, if you would please. He's also joined by Kathy Smith, Esquire, and General Counsel. Kathy, if you would wave. Shoran D.C. Sasso, Director of Member Services. And Glenville Henderson, Investment Analyst. I'm going to give you a rundown on how the evening is going to proceed. You will have a presentation by your CEO, Mr. Nibs. After the presentation, you will be invited to ask a question. All questions are going to be timed to a 1-minute maximum. If it turns out you have additional questions, you'll be given some paper so that you can write your questions down so that they can be fielded by the other panelists in between movements. So your follow-up questions and additional questions will be written on the paper provided, and we will be strict about the 1-minute maximum because we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to have their issues heard. We will read the questions, and all the questions will be answered by the staff and posted and printed publicly, those that we don't get to, and they'll be sent by email to each town hall participant. So those of you who are not able to hear your questions, make sure that you add your valid email to your question. There may be a brief intermission, there may not. It really depends on how things go. It looks like we have a lot of people who have a lot of questions. So without further ado, we're going to get things started. And that will be with a presentation by Austin L. Nibs, your CPA, your administrator and CEO of the Government Employees Retirement System. Mr. Nibs.
Good evening. It's nice to see so many of you here. I think we got to do better than we did in St. Croix. St. Croix, we had at least 300 members. So go and call your friends who you know are members and let them know to come out. But it's been about 2 years now since we had a town hall meeting. It was in February 2018. Since that time, obviously, things have changed with the system significantly. So what we want to do in the presentation is a very short presentation. We'll just bring you up to date as to where we are, and then you will have questions and answers. The most important thing tonight is to hear your questions and for us to give you the answers. How many individuals in here are active members? That's a good show. So I guess everyone else is a retiree. That always happens. We have more retirees to the meetings than actives. Okay, so we're going to start with the active, the membership from 1994 to 2018. As you can see in this graph, in 2018, we had approximately 9,000 368 members. That's active members. Now that has changed significantly. Currently, we have 8,708 active members, dropped from 9,368 to 8,708 active members. And currently we have, 8,708 retirees and 8,586 active members, almost 1,000 dropped. And one of the reasons this occurred because after the hurricanes, a lot of the members that are not vested have been leaving the system. And it's happening, we have a lot of members who are not vested that are leaving the system. Obviously, because it's unknown, they don't know exactly what's going to happen. They're young enough to leave and maybe start over, but we need them, but they're leaving for a lot of those reasons. And as you know, we need contributions. Contributions is what drives a pension system. Contributions to invest into the market to gain investment income so we can pay the retirees. As you can see here, the contribution levels versus the benefits levels. Let me tell you, every month we present to the board about the contributions coming in and the benefits payments. Every month we pay out close to $22 million a month to retirees. The contribution levels have increased somewhat, but usually it's 50% less. So that's where that problem is with the shortfall in contributions. We're not collecting enough contributions to pay the benefits to the retirees. And when that happens, the GERS has to go to its portfolio and draw down assets. So as you can see, our assets now are dwindling significantly. Hence, the unfunded liability is increasing. Okay? So I remember back in 2007, or well, just before the 2008, the recession, we had about $1.3 billion in assets. And you know what happened in 2008, 2009? Our assets had diminished to about 800 million. That's a significant drop. And 2009, 2010, 11, it came back up somewhat, but it came up to like maybe $1.1 billion. And since that time, it's been decreasing significantly. So presently, our unfunded liability is approximately 2.93. It could be higher. This is 2018. We don't have 2019 results as yet. But if the assets are going down, that means the unfunded liability is going up. So it could be probably $3 billion or more. And as you can see, our funded ratio is 20.8%. I must say, and I'm not glad to say this, but we have the worst funded ratio in the United States. Kentucky is about 33%. And we're not going to compare ourselves with Puerto Rico, but we are the lowest funded pension system in the United States. We have something what we call ADEC. And we're going to base the conversation on these two things that you see on the screen right there. And these are the main reasons why the system is in the way it is. You're going to hear a lot of talk about bad investments and things like that. That didn't cause the problem with the system. Two main reasons why this system is the way it is. There were 9 unfunded mandates that were granted or voted into law by the legislature going back from 1980, 1983, 1984, 1995, 94, 2000, 2001. So there were 9 unfunded mandates. One of those unfunded mandates cost the system $120 million. And I think the legislature appropriated about approximately $30 million, so it was net at least $90 million that were given to us. and nothing else for the other 8. Okay? So that means that members went home without paying their fair share of contributions. And those members probably still living today. Okay? That's one of the biggest problems right now. Also, the actuarially determined employer contribution, what we call ADEC. It's a statutory contribution, but they're actuarially determined by the actuary. Every year, they determine what additional contributions have to come into the system to keep the system on an actuarially sound basis. As you can see, we are 20.8% funded. You have some systems in the United States are 100% or more funded. A lot of them are around the average about 80%, 60 to 80% funded. But you must be able to have additional contributions because members are living longer. And because of these unfunded mandates that occurred earlier in the life of the system, where individuals are living longer, continue to pay them benefits, and the contributions are not coming in. So these reports are given to the legislature every year. What the legislature is supposed to do is to fund the system based on the actuaries' recommended contributions. And they have not been doing that. They have not done that since, I think, 1990. And that's a long period of time. So now that amount is probably over $2 billion that is owed to the system by the plan sponsors, the combination of the central government and the semi-autonomous agencies. Now, next week, hopefully, Judge Gomez is going to rule on this section 718 of the code, this actuarial contributions. I don't know how he's going to rule, but I think the government has already said that the last commissioner did acknowledge that it's owed to us, correct? Okay, so I think that, but the thing is that, can we get the $2 billion from the central government? Because they don't have the funds. But maybe there are ways, we can talk about it a little later, but hopefully the judge will rule in our favor that it's due to us. These are the 9 unfunded mandates. They should be in your handout. This is the actuarially determined employer contributions. As you can see, the variance between what should have been collected and what was due. So there's a big variance. Let's look at 2019. The ADEC contributions that should be due is $277,000. We are projecting we may get about 83 million. I'm sorry, 277 million. And we are projecting to probably receive about 83 million. This is the big reason right here. We have that disparity in the contributions. At the same time, during the same period, GERS had to go to its portfolio and draw down between 2000 and 2019 approximately, I can't see that, but I know it's $1.8 or $1.7 billion. $1,693,039,000. That's a lot of money from that portfolio. And we did that because we didn't have enough monies to pay the benefits. Now, if these monies did not move from the portfolio, we wouldn't probably be here today talking about insolvency of the system. And if that means that the government would have been paid its fair share of the ADEC, their contributions, and if that was so, we would not have had to withdraw those funds. Also, let me state here that in January 1, 2020, we raised the employer rate 3%, from 20.5% to 23.5% to bring in additional contributions. But do you know what the employer should be paying based on the actuarial assumptions? Instead of 23.5, they should be between 67% of payroll. So you see what that disparity right there. And that's because they neglected to fund the system on an actuarial basis all those years. Somehow we're not moving. Okay. Nothing happening. It's not.
It's like went through the voting house. The message went through the voting house. I gotta come out and go back in again.
While we await the return of the presentation to the screen, I'd like to welcome my broadcast family members, Lucky 13 WSTA and 107.9 FM Divide, for bringing this live to the people of the Virgin Islands and the world. You're listening to Insolvency is Not an Option, a presentation by the Government Employees Retirement System in the United States Virgin Islands. We're on the island of St. Thomas. I'm your host, Anita Davis. Later on, following this presentation, you will be able to ask questions. A reminder that your questions are limited to 1 minute maximum. And if you go over, you all are going to be invited to write your question down, and we will pop them in where time permits between live questions. And this is to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to participate. For those questions that don't make it either to the floor or get read live, as long as you provide your email address, GERS staff will definitely address your questions, and they'll make these answers public so that everyone will know the answers to the questions that you have. So we are standing by for the return of our presentation, which was being presented by GERS CEO Nibs. We're also going to have our expert panelists answering your questions. And they are Kathy Smith, Esquire, General Counsel. We are also joined by Shoran D.C. Sasso, your Director of Member Services, and Glenville Henderson, Investment Analyst. For those of you who just came in, we do want to remind you to make sure that your phone is on vibrate or on the off setting so as not to disturb the proceedings.
Yeah, okay. I'm on page 9 of the handout because we're having some technical difficulties. So we're still on page 9. I just want to point out on page 9 our withdrawals, as like I said. In 2020, so far, how much we have withdrawn?
So far for 2020, we've withdrawn $60 million to cover benefits.
Is that fiscal year or calendar year?
Fiscal year.
Okay. So we have withdrawn $60-something million already to pay benefits. So it appears that it's probably in line with last year, thinking about how many months we are in the fiscal year. Page 10, it just shows the market rate of return from 2000 to 2019. And this is a very important page because it scans about maybe 19 or 20 years. And in those 20 years, there were only at least 5 years of negative return. And those negative returns were in the period when the market was down. Look at 2008. 2008. The market went into a recession, right? Let's look at 2001, the same thing, 2001, 2002. So if you want to, let's be honest, because you hear a lot of misinformation about the how the market returns, what the board did and what they didn't do, the investments were bad. Well, it seems like we did pretty well. 15 years out of 20 years, and during those 20 years, there were only 5 down years due to market conditions. Okay? So we're on page 10. Okay? Let's move to, right now our assets is about
580 million approximately.
580 million. That's what we're down to. That's the portfolio in the market. And then we have our real assets, which is Havenside Mall, and the 2 vacant pieces of property, and the 2 office buildings. As you know, we sold Carambola. So we are now down to about 582 for $83 million. Now on page 12. This is a very important slide. Somebody brought this to my attention today, that we must stress this slide because it tells a story. It shows the contribution levels, benefit payments at 100%. So right now, each retiree is receiving 100% of the benefit payments. Okay? So we know that there's shortfall, and we have projected that by 2023, 2024, the assets would run out, especially the liquid assets. We may still have some real assets left, but the liquid assets would run out. So what happens if nothing is done by the plan sponsor, the legislature? Your contributions will go down to at least 45%. Okay? Well, I'm sorry, your annuity. Your annuity would be reduced at least 45%. We don't want to get there. We don't want to, well, this is real. We're basing this if nothing is done. And I can give you some assurance we have been doing the best we can on our own as GERS. Now it's in the hands of the governor and the legislature. But all we're saying is, if nothing is done by 2023 or 24, meaning to infuse the system with a significant amount of cash, need to be infused a significant amount of cash. And that 100% annuity that you receive every month will go down to at least 45%. Okay.
Mr. Nibs, if I would, I think it's important for you to understand that right now you get 100%. At 2023, 2024, when the system runs out of assets, your benefits are basically going to be on a pay-by-go basis. So whatever funds the system gets from the general government, the contributions, it'll come in and it'll go directly back out to you, the retirees. So that's why Mr. Nibs is mentioning that you'll probably get somewhere around 45%.
And it could be less, because it depends on the amount of contributions that are coming in. If members who are not vested are leaving the system, and we have a lot of non-vested members. In our system alone, we lost about 10 or 15 since the hurricane, so they're leaving. So if non-vested members start to leave, if they see that the government is not going to do anything, they're not doing anything, or there's no movement, let's be honest. We got to tell you, put everything on the table. Those members are going to leave, so that means there'll be reductions in contributions. So what Mr. Henderson said, come 2023, 2024, we can only pay you what we collect. So some days it depends. Sometimes the government don't pay in on time, or the semi-autonomous agencies don't pay in on time. That happens. By law, they should pay 10 days after the pay period, those money should come in. And when it comes to the day we have to pay the benefits, we can only pay what we receive. So it could be 45%, it could be 40%, it could be 35%, but we have to pay you only what we receive. Okay? We'll have more discussions on this. You can ask some questions about that. So what's happening with GERS? What's been happening? Let's see if this works. There we go. Okay. So what's been happening lately with GERS? Well, we had a meeting with the governor and the legislature on November 25th, 2019. And out of that, well, we presented to the governor the recommendations from the actuary. And there were 2 recommendations from the actuary to keep the system at least moving, and at least given some time until we can get a large infusion in cash. And one of those recommendations were the increase in the employer contribution rate to 23.5%, a 3% increase, which we did effective January 1, 2020. That has been implemented. The other recommendation was, and this is only the actuary's recommendation, was to cut benefits now by 30%, meaning that instead of 100%, cut the benefits to 70%, to be able to catch up, so that but by 2023, hopefully the infusion will be there, and hopefully that you probably would, I don't know, that would have to be negotiated with the employer, but hopefully to get back to where you were before. So that was the 2 other recommendations. We implemented one, and the board has not discussed the other one at any length. I know that in that meeting, the governor said he doesn't approve on any cuts for the members, and the legislature, as all 15 were there, said the same. So it's in the hands of the plan sponsor and the legislature. Out of that meeting also, we came up with a GERS legislative working group. We met twice. It's where the senators asked to meet with us so we can talk with each other, brainstorm, and give them some recommendation as to revenue-generating items. I think we came up with a significant amount, at least 20. But that legislature, I mean, I'm going to be very honest with you. You may have to increase taxes. I don't know. Or something is going to have to be done if you want to get to the deficit. Every year, there's a deficit of $150 million shortfall. That's where you remember Mr. Henderson said for 2019 we withdrew $125 million. So every year we come up with at least $150 million deficit because we have to pay expenses to our employees, and the government does not give us any administrative expenses.
Also, Mr. Nibbs, to note that as we add more retirees to the retiree payroll, that deficit increases.
That's correct. And every pay period, Ms. Sasa, we retire at least 20, about 20, an average of 20 people go home initial annuities every pay period. So that's like 40 a month. You know, obviously there are members who pass away and things like that, but it would increase the deficit every year. So we are looking at ways that we can be able to generate income, and the legislature would have to do that. But at least they start to work with us, and we'll see how far that goes. The governor has also created a GERS solvency working group. He brought it to our attention, and hopefully he would get that going very shortly. I did recommend to him that he include at least the 2 retiree groups, and he agreed to that. So hopefully that, we did have a task force under Governor DeYoung, and there were a lot of initiatives that were passed. GRS made a lot of recommendations, but those were like structural changes to the, instead now we're looking for more for the money part of it, because the system is not going to survive without an infusion of cash. There's an initiative going around by GRUF. GRUF is the St. Thomas Retiree Group. I see some of the members are here. There was a presentation made by this organization at the last board meeting, and I was very impressed because I made a presentation to the St. Croix Retiree Group on Monday, and they were very receptive to the GRUF initiative. So I told them, well, they need to get in contact and join together. I know that they did have a protest on Tuesday morning down at, Wednesday morning down at, in St. Croix in front of the government house in St. Croix. They tied up the traffic and things like that. But I think some of them now are realizing that what the situation is. And it's no longer, it's something that can be very detrimental to the economy if this system is allowed to become insolvent. Not just the economy, but to the member. You have some members who live, annuity check to annuity check, and it's going to be very detrimental to them also. Some members haven't even been able to collect Social Security as yet. But that's why we are here, letting the members, educating the members as to what occurred, who the responsibilities are. Now, let me make this clear, because some members in St. Croix still didn't get it. GRS, by statute, collects contributions and invests the contributions in order to pay benefits. GRS has no responsibility to try to find money. And that's what we've been doing. That's the responsibility of the legislature to fund this system correctly and the plan sponsor. That's all GRS is supposed to do. Collect the contributions, pay benefits, and administer the program. That's all we're supposed to do. Now, there's a portion of the code that talks about financing, and GRS went out on its own. We went out to an insurance company to see if we can get at least $2 billion or more, to see if we can finance the system. We also met with the delegate 3 times, well, 2 times in DC and 2 times in the Virgin Islands, and also with a national group, which we are a member, Nancy Pers. We talked about going to the U.S. Treasury to get at least $2 billion or $3 billion on GRS's dime, so that with a low interest loan, maybe of 3%, 2%, 30-year terms, with 10-year waiver, principal and interest. Now, nothing like this has never been done before. It's unprecedented. So, you're going to have to take Congress to probably get involved, and there's I don't know if the Republicans or not to say the Republicans, the administration, I'm not sure they're going to be favorable to something like that. So we don't know, okay? But at least we tried. Now it's in the hands of the governor. We have presented it to him, and I think he's taken steps, because he told me that when he was in D.C. a few weeks ago, he had a meeting with U.S. Treasury. And there were 3 things on the table that he spoke about. And I think he said it publicly, so I can say it. He spoke about a gasoline excise tax. This is what GRUF, the initiative that GRUF is trying to get out there. So if you're a retiree, you need to see GRUF and sign the petition, the initiative that they have. I'm not sure if they circulated the presentation yet, but you all guys need to get it out there. Also, he spoke about maybe trying to get some smaller distilleries in because, as you know, Diageo is under capacity. They're not at full capacity. So to bring in some rum distillers so that we can probably get some increase in the rum tax that comes back to us. Also, he indicated that he did discuss the GRS plight, and he said that they didn't say yes or no, but they were leaning their ears and thinking about it. But let's think about it. If this system is left to become insolvent, it's going to cost the federal government more because you're going to have to put more federal monies into the system, more food stamps, more monies for health care. It's going to be so this is what we're trying to probably present to them. Also, we did a white paper, GRS did. We just put it on the website. It's about 100 pages or so. It was issued in August 2019. We didn't make it public because we gave it to the governor. We gave it to the legislators in 2019. It was put on the website yesterday, so you can go up and look at that white paper. A lot of information, statistical information. But I think GRS has done as much as it can do to make sure that this system does not go under. We try every day, but it's up to the plan sponsor and the legislature to make sure that the system stays solvent. And like I said, the governor did meet, and hopefully he can get the solvency group, the GRS solvency working group together so that we can throw ideas out, and maybe they may have town hall meetings so that the members can participate. But something has to be done. And as that graph showed, if nothing is done by 2023-24, and it could be faster. Thank God we're not into any, the market has been going on for the last week.
Yeah.
So we don't have no more of our investment into any stocks like that.
Yeah, we've been de-risking the portfolio for a couple of years now, so for events like what's occurring right now. So we're pretty prepared for that.
Yeah, we used to have 17 managers. I see Ms. Barry out there, so she should know. We used to have 17 managers. Now we're down to 3. And most of our monies are into bonds. Those are secured. We had to de-risk our portfolio. Contrary to what you're hearing out there. Okay? That we should be in this big market because the market was up. Well, the market is down now, we would have lost our shirt. Okay? So I think the board did a right move in de-risking the portfolio. That's all I have, and we'll just await your questions, and hopefully we can give you the right answers.
Let's show our appreciation to Mr. Nibbs for the presentation. And also I'd like to appreciate all of the members of Team GERS who are here making sure that you have this forum. Let's give them also a round of applause. As we prepare for our first question, I'm going to read one that came off the floor. So if you have a question, the person you're going to be approaching is Sakita Freeman over here. She will have the mic for you. Remember, you have 1 minute. And if you don't get your full question in or you have other questions, you can write them down and put your email address. You can also write them and have them pulled up so that we can put them in between things. So as we prepare for our first question from the floor, I'm going to direct this one to the panelists. And once you receive the question, you can answer it, or if it's appropriate to you. This one comes from, it doesn't say, but it says, military veterans after serving 20 years can work for the Virgin Islands government 10 years and retire again. Being vested after 10 years, is this not draining the system? I guess they expect them to be vested after 20 years. That's what they wrote at the end. Which one of you thinks that you would be able to field that one?
I'm going to Good evening, everyone. Shoran Sasso, The law provides that military veterans can get 3 years of active service as credited service. However, they have to pay in for the military service to make up that 10 years of credited service. 3 years only of military service. So no military person can get 20 years of just military credit with the Virgin Islands government. It's 3 years, and they have to pay in the employee and the employer contributions to get that credit.
I have another question, if we have someone coming up from the floor, but I do have another question. Do you want to take the one from the floor? Okay. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon to the audience, everyone.
Is his mic on?
Yes, it is. Good afternoon, Mr. Nibbs, panelists,
Afternoon.
active members, and retirees. We want to thank you for providing this information to us this afternoon. Most of this information you have been providing to the public for some years now. So when I read the title, that insolvency is not my name is Randolph Thomas, by the way, is not an option. I was hoping that we would get some meaningful solutions being presented to us here. So I was wondering, what's the substantive meaning for us from a solution perspective of that title? And you don't have to answer that yet. Two more quick questions. My other question is, I was wondering what was the monthly revenue from member loans before they were discontinued? What was the monthly revenue? And I would anticipate that your consultants would have done an analysis to see really whether or not it was beneficial. I know you guys indicated that you needed to discontinue because you need to pay. But I was wondering if the revenue from member loans would not have given you a further run in regards to being able to pay these benefits. And finally, would the GERS be willing to...
Time is being called.
Would the GERS be willing to partner with an organization to provide a sustainable solution in terms of revenue to the GERS?
Well, let's look at the last one. When you said partner with an organization, that's not our responsibility. The responsibility of bringing revenues into the trust, it has to be legislated through contributions or some other means. So I don't think that's GRS responsibility. GRS can make the investments to get investment income. So that's, I think I have to make that clear. As far as the income from loans, I'm aware that I'll give it to you on an annual basis. We used to make sometimes $9–10 million a year in interest from the loans. And the main reason why the board suspended the loans indefinitely now, they did it indefinitely in 2015, is because we knew we had to change our asset allocation, and we knew that the time horizon was getting very short for insolvency. So we would have had to reduce the terms of loans, the terms of the loans, and most members would not have been able to pay a loan back in 5 years. You must remember some active members are going up with a $20 check every pay period. You don't know, but I know. Because they have so much liability, they have so many loans at credit unions all over, so they're going up with minimum amount in the net pay. So how were they going to be able to pay me back? That's what I'm saying. So we know the time horizon would have been short. We didn't want to get it where you come to insolvency. It's all liquidity. We needed the funds to pay the benefits. Okay? So we couldn't be lending monies out and getting it back 10 years later. That's the issue right there. Now, with You said something about insolvency and the meaning of the title. Well, it's not an option because if insolvency happens, it's going to hurt every member. It's going to hurt the retirees. It's going to hurt the economy. And you know something? The active members will continue to pay and they don't know what's going to happen. But maybe let's say in 15, 20 years, when tier 1 individuals, you must remember tier 2 members started back in 2005. So let's say in 15, 20 years, when they start to retire, the system is going to turn around. It is going to turn around. If you continuously fund it, increase your funding, and you must remember the tier 2 members are going to get less benefits because they're paying in more. They're paying in more to get less benefits right now. So the system will turn around. If we get a large infusion of cash, and over the next 20 years, it would turn around. So insolvency is not it cannot be an option. Too many people depend on annuities. We generate $250 million of the retirees. Some of the retirees are not here in the States, you know that. Not that many, but a lot of them go travel back and forth. But we put a lot of money into the economy. And when you multiply it with a multiplier effect, it's about $500 million. So if that economy is losing that type of money, you know, you should know what's going to happen. So that's why we say insolvency is not an option. There has to be other options to keep the system afloat.
And our next question coming from the floor. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone.
Evening.
Earlier, first of all, I want to say it's unfortunate that we're here in this situation. But I heard you spoke earlier about when you said that you didn't feel that the executives or the board made a bad decision in terms of selling Carambolda and also now going and sell the supermarket down in the West. I disagree with that because persons or groups don't sell assets. What I feel you all should do is rather lease and or own that property in maybe, as I say, leasing it. In that way, we will be liquidating our assets. Also, sometime back, I asked you about why don't we turn, because I know right now Wyco owns the Havenside Mall. Why don't we work on getting a museum open there, which I'm speaking about, a state-of-the-art museum, which you said you do have intentions of doing that, and I hope you go forward with that, because that's a big asset that can come to that area, which is a tourism industry. Thank you.
Okay, let's go from number 3. The museum, this is something that has been on the table, but you know what the problem is? We can't get those individuals who are trained, who worked at DPNR, who understands the archives and the cultural things about the Virgin Islands to come back to work. I've spoken to many of them. They would have to give up their pension, number one, and they don't want to do that. And that's one of the reasons why that museum hasn't moved forward. Well, I'm just saying, you have to have someone from the Virgin Islands who understands the culture and knows the culture. You can't bring someone from the States and expect them to do that. You need to have people who worked in the government before. They worked at DPNR. They've been working in the archives and the library science and all that stuff, who understand and knows the culture of the Virgin Islands. That's the whole thing about having a museum. It could depict what happened there on the dock. It could do a lot of things. But that's the reason why it's not that we hadn't tried. We did try. As far as VI Finest was a loan. And you know something? If I could have had every one of you in here to support VI Finest, VI Finest would have been operating Trust me, I know a lot of reasons why VI's finance did not succeed. I can't say it publicly, but I know. Okay? They had a mortgage with us. We didn't own the property. The property is owned by VI Port Authority. And thank God that they defaulted on the loan. It was $11 million. And we sold the leasehold, which the mortgage, it was a mortgage leasehold for the building. We sold that to the university last week for $8.2 million. And we have received so far over $11 million from VI Finance. Yes, it was a good project, but it did not succeed because of a lot of reasons, plus a lot of the members did not support it. If other supermarkets were 5 cents less, they go to the other supermarket. Trust me, I know. So it was not supported by the members. And the reason why they didn't have things on the shelf is because of a lot of reasons. And I think you should know what I'm talking about. Okay? Wyco does not own the mall. The mall is owned by by GRS. I think you said Wyco owned the mall. Oh, okay. In regards to Carambola was a loan. It was a loan that the board, and number one, when I saw that property, I didn't know it had such beautiful property in the Virgin Islands, and especially St. Croix, when I saw it for the first time. It was a beautiful piece of property. We had a 5-year loan with them. We know it was high risk, and we charged them high interest rates because it was high risk. And they defaulted. We didn't go in to Carambola to own a hotel. It was an investment where we know just like we invest in and we get back investment returns. So we had to take it over. It didn't really make any monies. The time between that period in 2012 and before the hurricane hit, it didn't really make any money. So GRS had to put in cash calls all the time to keep this Carambola going during the summertime. Okay, then initially we had to put in a lot of monies to refurbish the place, about $15 million or more. And then just before, after the storm, yes, it was, the occupancy was high because the guests were FEMA people and responders and all of those people from the States. So there was a high, but the damage to Carambola was $23 million. Okay? And at that time, Carambola appraisal was $15 million. But we had damages of $23 million. And we received 17 in investment proceeds. 4 of that 17 had to be put in, the insurance demanded we put it in to remediate and mold infested and roofs. And it's still, I was over there stayed over there up to 2 days ago, and it's still in disrepair. And you know what? Marriott wanted us to put in another $15 million. No. The board, I think, made a right decision to move and sell it. Okay?
We have another question from the floor. Good evening.
Good evening.
But let me say before, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Before the hurricane, yes, we did a lot of offers for Carambola. There were a lot of offers for Carambola, and they were good offers, like $30 million and $33 million. They were there. Yeah, the offers were there. I just want to put that in. We did have offers before the hurricane, $30 million and $33 million and all of that, but after the hurricane, it knocked everything out. So why hold on to an asset when you know Marriott is asking you to put in more monies, and I'd have to be using your contributions to put it in, and we don't know, So I think it was an investment. We took it over. We ran it for a good 7 years. Danny only had about 2.5, 3 years, good years out of those 7 years. And it was time I think, to do what we had to do and sell Carambola. It's a beautiful piece of property, but it's really damaged right now because I was there up to 2 days ago.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. Good evening to the members of the panel, and good evening to fellow members of the audience. I've got 2 questions for the panel. First was with regard to the last town hall meeting that I attended. Back in 2018, you had indicated that you would be liquidating assets, I think beginning later that year. One of the questions that I have is whether that has started and where you are in the process, if you have started that. I know you did indicate that you've done some risk reduction on the portfolio. Not sure exactly what all that means. Second question is whether the administration and the board would be supportive of legislation that allows active members with 30 years or more of service to be able to retire and then return to active service utilizing an alternative retirement system. Thanks.
That would be the responsibility of the legislature to come up with some type of a different system. I know that there's some talk about looking at direct contribution plan, DC plan, which is like a 401k. But the problem is, if you want this system to continue as is, the present system, if you require maybe new members coming in to go on another plan, who is going to pick up the contribution shortfall from those new members? We need contributions. So the plan sponsor has to decide what type of system it wants. Okay? Now, they did talk about new members coming in to change. You must remember there's a contract between the member and the plan sponsor. There's a legal contract. So they talked about, like I said, new members coming in and going on another plan. But if those new members go on another plan, who is going to pick up the shortfall in contribution to pay the retirees? But as far as members retired coming back, that's something that the legislature would have to deal with. But presently, only police, nurses, and teachers can come back for up to 2 years. Yeah. Okay?
I think you had a question on the asset allocation. Right. So, yeah, so based on our dynamic asset allocation that we adopted back in 2015, we've been moving away from more the riskier asset classes. So we've liquidated out of all of our international equity positions. We've liquidated out of all of our international fixed income positions as well. So we're totally out of international stocks and bonds. We're currently liquidating out of equities. I think right now we're about 7% equities right now in the portfolio. So we're winding that down. And like Mr. Nibbs mentioned, sometime by probably beginning fiscal year 2021, we'll probably be all fixed income and alternatives, or the remaining real assets that we have.
Okay. And I believe we have another person on the floor who's ready. Good evening.
Good evening to all.
Good evening.
My first question is whether or not currently GRS is getting the monies from the rum revenues, which is, I think, about $7 million annually, correct?
That's correct. I know there was some change in the allocation, but yeah, if we're getting it.
Is it current?
I can't respond to you because I don't think we are getting it right now. I'll have to check.
So.
But the last time I checked, I didn't see it.
So that means, and just for probably a couple people don't understand what I'm asking him, the law provides that every year from the rum revenues that GRS receives $7 million. It had one time previously were up to over 30 some odd million. I think it had come current at some point.
came current at September 2019. Since that time, I haven't seen any because they had paid us a $21 million in a lump sum.
So since you
amount.
haven't seen it, what have GRS done to make sure they recover it or to get it?
Well, I wrote to the finance commissioner some time back. I also asked him about the lonesome dove,
Okay.
and I haven't gotten a response.
And what, I just wanted to go on record by my time up. Sound like
Well, there's a back and
Okay.
forth, so if you could
well,
finish your thought.
fine, here's where I'm going though. And I'm speaking as Carlton Dow, not as Viper, not as no ex-senator, because my family, myself, is all vested in this system. And so I'm thinking along the same line that the same rump revenues that we're talking about, that's why I think, and I know you made mention of getting more distilleries, but sometimes GRS themselves got to get in the game in terms of helping with the education to a lot of the population. Because when the same rum companies were coming here, this whole place was in one uproar. That's some of the same money now that should be going to GRS. And so when these times come, we don't need to take a backseat. We need to be active, and hopefully we could look towards, because the rum revenues provide for over, this territory get over $100+ million annually from rum revenues. So my point is that at some point we have got to look seriously and make that dedication to using a source such as that to assist in a big way with the system. It's only going to happen by an infusion of cash. So it makes no sense for us to go at war with each other. There'll be enough blame to go around. How are we going to resolve it and where that infusion of cash is going to come from? I solely believe and strongly believe that that's where we should be looking.
And I agree with you. I mean, the same proposal came directly with a consultant to the board. We had a board meeting. The person asked to meet with the board. We met with the board. We told him about it. We have no problems. We like that to happen, but we told him he would have to go to the governor or PFA. That's where he would have to sell that proposal. But he did come to the board and presented that same proposal to the board.
I have a question in my hand that I'm going to read, and everyone who comes up, if you could, just have your question ready, but if you dialogue, it does confuse the timing, so we're trying our best to be fair. I have a question in my hand that says, there's quite a few of them here, but in the interest of other people, I'm going to take the first one and pass the rest on. Do the governor and the lieutenant governor receive their pension from GERS?
No. The governor, lieutenant governor has an account in Department of Finance. The legislature approves their pension, I think, every year, and they paid out to the Department of Finance. They're not members of the GRS.
And a related question, do the senators receive their pension from GERS? And if they do, please clarify or explain their benefit plan or package. That's a related question.
Well, they are the only individuals who are not members of the GRS are the governor, lieutenant governor. Now, the legislatures, the members do have a different plan. Number one, they don't have to work 30 years. I think if they work 3 terms, they can get a percentage, and they work 3 terms, which is 6 years, they can get a percentage of their pension. And I think if they serve for 20 years, you go ahead, they can get 100%. But we let Ms. Sasso give you some more information on that.
For the first 6 years, it's 3.5% for each year. For 7 to 12 years, it's 4% for each year. 13 to 20 is 4.5% for each year, between 13 and 20. And for someone who serves 20 years, it's 5% for each year at 100%.
And there's only one senator that had gotten that, which was Senator Lorraine Berry.
And And I believe that question is answered, so we're going to go back to the floor.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Evening.
Senator Dowd preempted me, but I'm going to follow up on his question. In 2006, the administration then received authorization to float a $600 million bond. In 2007, the new administration did not pursue the bond, but instead sought and received authorization to assist Diageo on the premise that GRS would receive $100 million annually. That was later reduced, am I correct? And my last question was, how much are we getting? At some point, it was supposed to be 10 million, not 100 million. It was supposed to be 10 million, and it was reduced to 7. And he asked the question, are we getting 7? Has any discussion happened since 2006 about floating the bond to save GRS?
That is discussed all the time. I mean, even the governor, every meeting we have, the governor or any legislature, they talked about this $600 million bond. $600 million, we'll take it, but it's not going to do anything for the system right now. We
had the authorization.
We did have it. It's still there.
We had the authorization to do it.
It's still there.
And instead of doing it, the money was diverted, the effort was diverted to support Diageo.
Correct.
And now we're not getting the money that we were promised from Diageo, the
Right.
10 million.
Right. No, there's discussion internally. I mean, we have discussed it with the senators. There's authorization there, but they're the ones that have to make the move.
So, in other words, the discussions for GRS pretty much is not, the responsibility lays in the hand of the senators and the administration.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Moving on with our questions, I have one in my hand as we wait for someone else to approach the microphone. Do you know who the members of the governor's solvency work group are? And I'm going to assume they want you to name them.
No, the governor has not. I did discuss it with him. He would be on the board. Someone from GRS will be on the board. Some legislators or maybe the finance committee chair may be on the board. I recommended that he have other stakeholders like the 2 retirement groups, representative from them. They may also have to maybe look at individuals from the private sector, maybe AARP, these type of groups, interest groups. So he would have to be the one making a decision, but he asked me what my recommendations were, and I gave him some of those that I gave you.
So the group has not actually been formed?
No.
Are the autonomous agencies, Senate and judiciary, paying the actuary recommended contribution? I'm going to read that again. Are the autonomous agencies, Senate and judiciary, paying the actuarial recommended contribution? Actuarial?
No, we're not.
No, dear.
No, they're not.
No, dear.
Do we have any other people that want to ask questions on the floor? Okay, I'll continue. When the unfunded mandates were presented, why didn't GERS ignore them? Did the system meet its fiduciary responsibility?
I cannot respond to that. I was not there at the time, but I'll see what legal can.
I was not there. Good evening. I was not there at the time, but back several years ago in the 90s, the GRS did refuse to pay one of the benefits, and they were taken to court, and the judge ordered that the GRS was not insolvent, and therefore they had to pay the benefit.
Okay. Oh, we have someone on the floor. Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
My name is Ira Trent. I've been a member of the GERS since 1977. 1985, the GERS was one of the the best retirement fund in the world. The other part of the government, the merchants, for example, would complain about paying their taxes, and they suggested that we have this early retirement system. I don't think that was the problem for the GERS. The problem with the GERS is simply that the entire government is being mismanaged. The GERS was created to support retirees, and it's supposed to have 6 employees to 1 retiree. Now, based on the information you just give us, it's like 1 to 1. You know, so my thinking is that the government is creating this problem because the fund cannot be funded properly unless there are enough people supporting it. Now, you said that there's some people that don't have to join, and that's true. But if they don't join, they can't get the benefit. You know, it's Mr. Nibbs, I've been coming to this meeting for years, and only twice I have seen the board present. Here a couple of times I saw the board. You know, you're the CEO and you have your staff. The CEO don't make any decision on how the GERS is run. The GERS is run by a board of trustees, and the trustees, to me, feel like the GERS is theirs because they make decisions that affect us.
You can finish your thought.
Well, the trustees, for example, make decisions that affect all of us. You know, for example, every commercial loan that the GERS has made has been a failure. And you sit up there and you tell us, you make excuse for them. And I'm saying, this is ridiculous. I mean, if you have big degrees, you know.
I'm going to have to call time again, sir, if you could wrap it up.
The reason why this system is failing is because the government is not being properly run. Thank you very much.
I think I need to correct you in regards to every commercial loan that they have made have been a failure. No. Seaborn, we got back all our money plus 30%.
Which one has been good?
Seaborn, I just told you, we got all our monies back plus 30%.
I don't, to me, that was a bad loan.
GeoNet?
It was a bad place, it was a bad loan because
We got 30%.
they were supposed to have the maintenance part of the airline here.
Yes.
Which meant it was jobs.
Correct.
It was jobs and there were taxes.
And that's the reason why we called a loan, because they were going to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
That's what we did.
So
And
you should have given a loan in the first place.
but we got 30%.
I know, Mr. Nibbs, I know. Look,
I'm going
your job.
to have to say thank you.
Yeah,
If
but
you
let me
have
finish.
more, if you could write it down, please, because
No, I
they can
can't write it down.
Also, we have GeoNet.
You have
GeoNet
all
was
these young people. You have all these young people in here. They're not stupid. They know what's going on. But you have to come together. I voted for the governor, but I'm not impressed with the governor. All of the decisions that are made by the governor is wrong. To me, it's wrong. You know what I'm saying? We have all these young people here with big education, have big degree. They know what's going on. Everybody sit back.
Sir,
This place should be
Sir,
full of people tonight.
Sir, if you would, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening.
Evening.
My name is Michael Dunstan. I'd like to correct some misinformation that I just heard. I know for at least the last 3 judges who have left the court system, the judiciary paid an actuarially determined contribution on top of the employee's full contribution, the government's, the employer's full contribution, and after those were paid, the judiciary was asked to pay an additional amount, a substantial additional amount in each instance for an actuarially determined additional contribution. So suggesting that the judiciary has not done so is not accurate.
The hazardous employees, class 3, and the judiciary have paid a reduced. That ADEC, you should be paying 67%.
Thank you.
67%. That's what you should be paying. We did it at a reduced rate for hazardous and judges. You're correct about that.
Sir, all I'm saying is the GERS sent us a bill, and we paid that bill.
It's for firemen, it's for any hazardous employees, police officers, judges, legislators. And you're paying at a reduced amount. You should be paying at 67%.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, please.
The judge is going to rule on that next week, by the way, the ADEC. And we will be charging the 67%.
Okay, are we ready to move on? All right. I have another question that was written. It says, please explain why the government has been allowed to be delinquent over the years that we are where we are today. Why wasn't it addressed through legal means and forced the government to do what it was supposed to do in the earliest stages?
We've been in court since 1980.
Since 1984, the GRS took the government to court. We're in court right now, still in court. As you remember, after the hurricane, the government was behind in their deductions. What they were doing is taking the employee contributions and the loan deductions and using it to pay their bills. And we couldn't, people had to be retired and couldn't be retired because their contributions were not coming in. We took them to court, and the judge said by a certain time it had to be paid. We've taken them to court. We're in court now with the ADEC that Judge Johnson just talked about. Okay? And this has been going on since 1984. Now, you ask why the GRS or the board, a retiree made a good statement some days ago. We know about it. We can do it. The board has the power to do it because we're not supposed to be paying out more than we're taking in. We can shut the annuities down. We can stop the annuities being paid based on the code. We can do that. And all the retirees in here would not be receiving an annuity. By code, the board can do that right now. Because by statute, we're not supposed to be paying out benefits for annuities that haven't been paid for. In ADEC, we've been owed over $2.5 billion. You know what that means? How is this government going to ever pay us back or pay the system for what they're supposed to? So the board has the authority to stop paying annuities right now. And you ask why they didn't do it. Because of you. All of us have families and mothers and brothers and everything. It's going to be very hard to shut the economy down. Some people, they live paycheck to paycheck, but the board has the authority right now to stop paying annuities.
Do we have any other questions from the floor? Okay, I will read one. Since those retirees in the 90s got early retirement without contributing fully, why didn't the system make those beneficiaries now pay a higher percentage?
The GRS can only charge what the law allows, and there was no provision for GRS to charge those early retirement members who went home any type of penalty. That was supposed to have been funded by the plan sponsor, who was the government of the Virgin Islands. They should have put in the money for the early retirement. That was one of the unfunded mandates that Mr. Nibbs spoke about.
What is the present cap for retirees? Why was it raised from 50,000 when unfunded liabilities were in place?
Repeat the question, Ms. Anita.
Repeat the question.
Repeat the question. What is the present cap for retirees? Why was it raised from 50,000 when unfunded liabilities were in place?
The maximum that a member can receive in an annuity for a regular member is $65,000. To the best of my knowledge, that has always been the cap. You pay contributions on $65,000, and the maximum you can receive after 40 years is $65,000. The rate for judges, the judges pay benefits and they receive based on their salary. Also for the legislature, it is based on their salary.
I have another question. What markets are the primary investments, and do they change or do they remain in the same markets? What markets, what markets are the primary investments? Do they change or do they remain in the same markets?
Currently, as I mentioned, with our divestiture from the more riskier asset classes, we're more now concentrated in the US debt market, so basically fixed income. So we have about 70% of the portfolio right now is in US fixed income and cash. And that's primarily after we pretty much liquidate out of the remaining equity positions that we have. That will primarily be the driving source or the driving investment vehicle that we have going forward, absent of any infusion of cash between now and 2023. I hope I answered that question.
So basically you are contributing in safer.
That is correct. So as part of the policy to de-risk the portfolio with 2023 insolvency pending, like I mentioned, we've been reducing our equities to more safer asset classes, which is fixed income. And at some point in time, the portfolio will just consist of fixed income and, like I said, the real assets that we still have on the books. Come 2023 or 2024, I mean, with how the market is acting right now, it could be 2022, and I don't mean to frighten anybody. But by 2023, we should be out of the fixed income assets, and we may just have, like Mr. Nibbs mentioned earlier, a couple of real assets, stuff like maybe Haven site and the lands.
How much has Diageo contributed to the system since its inception, annually and gross? And secondary to bonds being redirected from GERS as applied to Diageo, wasn't it supposed to be that annually funds would be directed to GERS? Should I read that again?
Well, the first question is, I have no knowledge of any funds coming from Diageo. I know, like Senator Dow said, there was $7 million, I think, beginning back in 2015, that was supposed to be directed to GRS as direct contribution. And as of September 2019, it amounted to $41 million and received $41 million through September 2019. We haven't received anything for 2020 fiscal years yet.
And so the gross is, I'm assuming they mean to date.
I really wouldn't know, other than that $7 million coming from the rum taxes. I wouldn't know.
All right. How much does the governor and the semi-autonomous agencies owe? And how much does the system need to be solvent? Some of this may have been answered already, but I'm sure we could all use a refresher.
Well, let's start with the semi-autonomous agencies. Other than Wang Lui Hospital, which we have a settlement with, I think I'm safe to say that all these semi-autonomous agencies are basically up to date, maybe behind 1 pay period or 2 pay period, with the statutory deductions. But the ADEC that we just spoke about, we're going to start billing them for that. We were just waiting for the ruling, and we'll start billing for the ADEC. So it's only Wang Lui that we have some issues with that owes contributions going back to maybe 2012 through 2014, 2015.
And if you could repeat how much the system needs to be solvent? I think it was in the presentation, was it?
Yes, well, the unfunded liability, I would say, is about $3 billion right now. So if we receive $2 billion, I mean, the assets would increase, the liability would go down. So I can safely say that the system need a large infusion of cash, no less than $1 billion. I think our, Glenville, you can correct me, the last time we spoke, our investment advisor spoke to us, that $1 billion came up and he said that won't be enough.
Yes, he did. I think that $1 billion at the time, I think he mentioned it may have been closer now to 2.5, almost $3 billion, I believe.
Correct. So that's what we need as a large infusion of cash. And those funds, if we get a large infusion, they will go into the market because we need to earn investment income so that we can pay benefits. So we won't have to be withdrawing funds all the time.
But if I can, Mr. Nibbs, annually, like Mr. Nibbs mentioned, the retiree payroll is about 252 million. Of that, there's a shortfall usually of half of that, so we have to pull out, let's say, maybe 140 or 150 million from the portfolio. Even if the plan sponsor can kick in more contributions at some point in time throughout the year, that we wouldn't have to draw that 150, 140 million dollars. Let's say if we just maybe have to draw 50 million, 75 million, every little thing helps.
What is the status of the cannabis funds that are to be used for GERS? And is this something that can really help the system?
We have not received any cannabis funds.
Whoever wrote this question, if you want, you can come to the mic and clarify. We'll leave it open.
I'll just make mention that as much as cannabis and the cannabis industry has been in the news, I think we all know that cannabis is still under federal statute, still illegal. So I believe that would, to have our pension plan accept funding directly from cannabis, I don't know. I'll have to defer to the attorneys, but I don't know how that would work, to be honest.
A bit volatile? All right, I'll move on. If GERS is losing money, why do they continue to hire staff, including new staff at Haven site? Why not contract for maintenance services instead of hiring?
We have contracted out the landscaping portion, but we need contributions, don't we? They were on our payroll before, at least 50% or 80% on our payroll. We need contributions. They were not paying contributions to us. Now they come over with us, they got to pay contributions.
When is GERS going to have a town hall meeting with the legislature to resolve this issue?
We had town halls with the legislature, let's say about 5 or 6 years ago, in St. Croix and in St. Thomas.
I think they're referring to the unfunded mandate and the lack of allocation of funds.
Well, there are not going to be any more unfunded mandates because the statute requires that before any legislation is passed regarding GRS, there has to be an actuarial revaluation. So I don't think that can ever happen again. I can't remember the other.
That was it. That was the one question. When is GERS going to have a town hall meeting with the legislature to resolve the issue?
We meet with them constantly. Like I said, we have a working group. It came out at the November 25th meeting with the governor and legislature. So we work with them all the time. We're in constant contact with senators, on a weekly basis. They ask us questions, they ask us our opinion, and so.
Okay, the governor's work group has not yet been formed. Has the GERS and legislature work group been formed? Who is actually working regularly on this issue, especially since it is not GERS's job to find money?
Well, it's a working group, and Attorney Smith is a facilitator. I let her handle it. She's a facilitator. And President Neville, is it Novell? Novell Francis, he spearheads on the other side. And like I said, we had 2 sessions so far. We just had to cancel a session a couple weeks ago. But a lot of brainstorming. We have the Bureau of Economic Research on that group. I can't remember the gentleman's name. Dorsey, Mr. Dorset. And then there's the economist there also, Mark Connor. He's the economist for the government of the Virgin Islands. So, like I said, we're trying to determine how we can generate revenues. And we gave them at least 20 different ways they can. But a lot of it, you're going to have to be taxes and economic development. And yeah, well, you go ahead and say.
We gave some ideas, and the Bureau of Economic Development, they're trying to cost out how much money would be realized from some of those ideas to see if they're viable. So at the next meeting, and that was one of the reasons the meeting was postponed, so that we could have those figures when we met, so we could see what was viable, what was not viable, and to determine how much money could come into the system from those avenues.
Okay. I'm going to read this one exactly how it's written. What about the big shots who never paid back their loans?
You mean employees? Big shots, what do you mean?
It says big shots.
Well, if you're talking about employee loans, we never lost an employee loans because active employees, because their contributions were held as collateral. So if they defaulted, we would, let's say they resigned and they had a loan, we would take the loan payments, the balance out of the contribution, and we would give them the difference. So we never, an active member can never default on a loan. The retiree, we may have a little problem with retirees. Well, it comes out of their check, but if they pass, insurance would pick it up. So we can't really.
Big shot can get away with it is.
When you say a big shot, I mean, are you saying a big shot in government? Well, the governor, lieutenant governor cannot get a loan. The judges and legislators can have loans because they're members of the system. So those are the only big shots.
I think people might have this impression that there's someone getting away with something.
No. We don't really have any foreclosures on mortgages, rarely. We had a few, but rarely any foreclosure on mortgages. We have about 95 mortgages left in the portfolio.
Thank you. How long is it taking for new retirees to get on the return payroll? Oh, I'm sorry. How long is it taking for new retirees to get on the retiree payroll? And is it still taking 1 year plus?
We're averaging about 3 months on average, between 3 to 6 months. Please take into consideration that outside influences affect when a retiree is placed on the payroll. We have to receive the NOPA, the retirement NOPA. Contributions have to come in timely. We have individuals who owe contributions themselves and don't have the money readily to bring it in, so it takes a while for them to get placed on the payroll. There was a period of time when we had a lot of difficulties getting NOPAs, getting the payments in and so forth, and members were taking a lot longer. But I want to say in 2019, we've seen a significant improvement, unless there are issues, funding issues. Very rarely do we have system issues. I want to say maybe in about 100 persons, we encounter 4 persons, 5 persons. It has increased immensely as far as the turnaround time for placing retirees on the payroll. I'm comfortable in saying we're seeing 3 months to 6 months, and I think my assistant director can shake her head, yes.
And Ms. Sasso, I guess if someone has an issue with this, they should come to you?
That is correct, between me and my staff here on St. Thomas, as well as the staff on St. Croix. And we also have our customer service area. We want to encourage our active members as well as our retirees to join our member self-serve online. What we're seeing is that not enough persons are signing up on the member self-serve system. You need to visit the website. There's a lot of information on there that you can read and ask questions about. We have frequently asked questions that you can get answers to. You need to visit the website. We have resources. We're not taking advantage of it. I'm an active member. As an employee and an active member, I would like to see more active persons coming out to these town hall meetings as well. Just putting in a plug there, because the retirees are here in large numbers, and we're the ones who are going to be facing whether we're going to be getting pensions. I'm not seeing you.
I hear some applause. Go ahead. Give it to her. Give it up. Okay, next question. Please explain or clarify the judge's retirement percentage for years of service. I believe you went through this earlier, but this question, the question just came in, so I'm assuming that the person wants you to revisit.
The judges get 5% per year of employment for each year that they work, and they can retire with 3 terms. And have to be age 50, must stress that.
All right, and I'm returning to one that had several questions on it. I wanted to make sure that
Let me correct that, please. It's 1 term and age 55.
Age 55.
Yes.
Okay. There was one that had a few questions on it, and I wanted to make sure to get to everyone else, so I held them back. But now I'm going to revisit this one. This is the same thing. Do the Superior Court judges receive their pension from GERS? If they do, please clarify. And I think you've gone through that. And how do the benefit packages of the governor, lieutenant governor, senator, or judges impact the GERS system? Are these group contributions enough to adequately cover their benefits?
Well, the governor, lieutenant governor's package is not with the GRS. They're not members of the GRS. And I think I can safely say Ms. Sasso can tell me the judges and senators pay a higher rate. And as you just heard, the former judge said, retired judge, we are billing for ADEC, not really the true rate. we're billing them at a reduced rate. We should be billing them at 67%. So when they retire, and like I said, hopefully when the ruling comes down, we would start billing the government and all plan sponsors for the ADEC at 67%.
And this isn't really a question, but it is a clarification regarding the rum revenue, that it is not Diageo alone, it's all rum revenue, including cruising. And that's it for the questions that I received that were written. And if anyone else wants to come up from the floor, you're welcome to take the microphone. We'll give it a couple of moments. Well, that really looks like, since that's all the questions that you have, I'll ask my host if there's any housekeeping they need me to do before we...
There's a question.
Yes? Oh, okay. Good evening.
Good evening. I just wanted to ask concerning the ruling that you're speaking about the ADAC. Could you expound on that? I'm sorry I was late if you did before. If you can explain what that ruling is and what is expected from it.
The ruling has to do with whether or not the ADEC is covered in a consent judgment that exists between the GRS and the government of the Virgin Islands. And the ruling is expected sometime next week. At least that's what the judge said. So it's not whether the ADEC is owed, because that has been already agreed to by the government. It's whether it's covered under this particular consent judgment.
And the ADEX, the acronym stands for Actuarially Determined Employer Contribution.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. I just wanted to add that in addition to what the judge mentioned with regard to the ADEC, the courts also pay ADEC on their marshals, and they have also paid everything that has been billed thus far. Thank you.
You're correct about that. I mean, when we bill them, they do make the payments. So we must say that, but it's not built at it's built at a reduced rate, but you are paying it.
We can only pay what's billed.
Correct, you're correct.
So are there any other questions or points of clarification from the floor? If there are no more questions, I'd like to thank everyone for all of the time and effort that was put into presenting this town hall on behalf of the Government Employees Retirement System. Thank you very much to the panelists, including... Yes?
I just want to recognize there are two trustees here. The chairman, Dr. Callender, and Carol Calwood. Also, we have the board counsel, Pedro Williams, here with us. So, sorry about...
Thank you for joining in.
I didn't want
So
to
thank
say
you very much to our panelists, Austin Nibbs, Administrator and CEO of GERS, Kathy Smith, Esquire, General Counsel, Shoran D.C. Sasso, Director of Member Services, and Glenville Henderson, Investment Analyst. Thanks to the GERS staff and to all of our broadcast partners, 107.9 FM The Vibe and WSTA Lucky 13. I'm your host, Anita Davis. Get home safely.